What's going on, guys? Stevie from the Minimasters here, and today I'm going to show you how to change all the front gaskets on your engine. So here is the 5-liter 302 engine out of my truck. I pulled it out to weld the engine cross member, and since it's leaking like a sieve, I decided, why not? Let's go for some gaskets. Now, I said we're only going to tackle the front, and you see that the oil pan gasket's missing. I will show you how to do that in a separate video, so don't worry about that. So front gaskets is everything up front here, and really the one thing that I'm actually trying to go and change is the timing cover gasket, because I'm suspicious that it's leaking. As you can see here on the side of this engine, you notice there's like leakage here, okay? Now, I'm not exactly sure where it could have come from, but all I know is the other side of the engine is dry. I mean, for all I know, it could have been from, you know, valve covers and whatnot. But like I said, I'm here. I have a whole stack of brand new gaskets, so why not? So engine in the engine bay or out, you're going to start here. So you're going to take the pulley off, which is right there on the floor. It's a couple bolts, okay? And then comes the harmonic balancer. Now, this sucker is held on here by this huge bolt, okay? Now, I've always used an impact gun. I got my trusty Milwaukee right there. And you just go for it and you're able to get it out. If you try to go for a breaker bar, you need some way of keeping the engine from turning over. So, look, I mean, if you've gotten this far with some of the repairs in your truck that you're considering pulling the engine without owning a impact gun, I mean, kudos to you, but it really makes the job easier. So once that bolt comes out of inside of here, then you pull the harmonic balancer. Now, you must get the harmonic balancer puller tool like this. You don't want to get the jaws. I have seen people that will fish them through here, but this is by far the easiest way. If you take the jaws and you clamp around the outside here, you'll end up pulling the steel piece off of this other one. So you notice it's steel here, rubber ring in this. It's literally two pieces of metal. So you don't want to pull them apart, you want to pull them together. So this pulls the inner, which brings everything else. So you'll thread your two nuts in there and go for it. And literally, it should be quite this. And just like that, it's off. So you'll also notice that right there is an engine seal, okay? So if you have that one, that's also a good thing to change while you're at it. And just in case you were curious, that's the beginning of your crankshaft. So I'm going to change that seal and I'll bring you back. So I've actually elected to leave that main seal in there until I actually get the timing cover off. So to go for the timing cover, clearly there is a lot in the way, but there's some stuff we can keep on here as we go about removing it. So this chunk here, this is your power steering. You're gonna have to take this off, and it's real simple. There's just a bolt, bolt, and bolt, okay? Then that comes off. Then the next thing you're gonna wanna pull here is your water pump, okay? So your water pump is basically all the surrounding bolts here. Well, you don't have to take, yeah, you have to take those two there, and then of course this stud here, and you can take that off. Be sure to unclamp the two hoses. Once that off, we should be squarely looking at the timing cover, and the rest of our accessories and pointless stuff can stay on. So here is the exact spot where your water pump would normally be, and I've since removed it. Okay, nothing really out of the ordinary. The one good thing is, like, as I guessed, this is a newer water pump. It just looks really fresh. Same with some of the gaskets. The gasket here between this and the plate actually looks pretty good. The one that made it up against the engine, not so much. There's some areas around the bolts where I think it was weeping through, which explains a lot, because I had like a very, very slow coolant leak. So the next step here is, again, we don't have to touch any of our accessories over there, and our thermostat and housing can stay in place. So then what you're gonna do is you're just gonna go through here and you're gonna take off the remaining bolts. So the water pump shares a few of these, so we've already taken a few of them off, but these two here and those two there, those aren't shared, and they're exclusive to the timing cover. once those are off, the whole thing comes right off.
So here we are, guys. Here is the timing chain. Okay, so the mating surface wasn't this clean. What I do is I go around, I scrape it with a flat razor, and then actually my favorite thing to do is you take one of these honeycomb paint stripping wheels and you go around the edge and you just clean that sucker right up, okay? And there's just enough room around here where you can kind of get it along the edge and get it super, super clean. So not only to have that, but over there on the wall, you'll see I cleaned off all the other bits that go here. So now the next step is actually to start putting everything back on here. So we're gonna start by doing one last little clean of the gaskets. As you can see, we have a little bit of, you know, brake fluid that ran some gook down there. And then we're gonna mate the gasket up for that timing cover on, and then I'll bring you back to do the water pump. So before we put the timing cover on, it's best that you put the main seal on first. It's just easier this way. So this is your crank seal, okay? I did say main seal earlier, that's the rear main seal. This is known as your crank seal. And it goes right here, outside to in. Okay, so this is the outside, goes like that. So basically the trick here is you get it as aligned in the hole as possible, and then you need something to force it down around the edge. So I have a ball joint press, and so I put one of the outer sleeves there, and then this cap so I have something to hit, okay? Now, here's where you can go wrong with this. See how there's nothing under here? Okay, a lot of people will go and they'll tap this thing in here and they'll crack their cover somewhere. Usually they'll crack this piece off or crack here. It's aluminum, so remember we're talking about softer metal. So when you go to tap this thing in, you want this edge supported like so, okay? If you can have the whole entire thing supported, so in this case you have this end supported, then you have something that slides under here, that's the best of both worlds. But you need at least this end supported so that when you go whacking down on this thing, you don't crack your cover. Another school of thought is to take a little bit of gasket maker and just put like a very paper thin layer all the way around, just so if there are any discrepancies in the mating surface, it will fill those. Now mine's like really, really nice, okay? There might only be like very minor hairline thing, so I might put just a little bit. But so now you know how to do that, press that in, and then you can go about mounting this cover back on there with your gaskets. So here is the timing cover, partially bolted on because it does share bolts with the water pump, okay? So it's these two bolts you can put back on, and these two were right here by the timing indicator. And then of course I forgot to mention there's these two hiding up here, and you can get at them with a regular spanner wrench. Okay, so I reached in there with this guy. It's got the little self-ratcheting end. One thing I've learned about auto mechanics, it's all about owning the right tools. If you don't own this, well, you're missing out, because that's just where it needs to go in there, and you can ratchet this thing without having to pull it out, reorient yourself and put it back in. And then you'll never get a torque wrench in there unless you have really long crow's feet. But one of the things I could do is since it's a 1/2-inch box wrench, I can actually fit my 1/2-inch torque wrench in here and actually kind of get it pretty close at that. But the torque spec is 15 to 21 pounds, which is pretty much a good push down with your hand, that, you know, for areas that you can't quite get at it. So keep that in mind there. And what I like to do is I don't like to go 21. I don't like to go heavy because it's an old engine, and I certainly don't want to be at the bottom end. So I go somewhere in between, like 17, 18. So I actually did these all to 18 and I left them like there. This guy here, and this is a good example for you guys, for some reason has just too much play in it. So I only managed to get the torque wrench to read 13 foot-pounds. If I start going beyond that, I just felt like I was going to strip it out, and I'd rather not do that. So I'd rather it holding something than not. So that one will always be a suspicious bolt there. And as you can see, we have our new crank seal in here. Just knock it out, knock it back in using the ball joint press there. Now, all my engine torque specs are going to come from the Haynes manual, which I have perfectly laid out over here. So if you're looking for the timing cover one, you're looking right here. Boom, 15 to 21. And then on the back side,
they have all the other relevant ones for the vibration dampener, flywheel, all that good stuff. And then of course, let's fast forward to the water pump. The water pump, again, not very, you know, a lot of foot-pounds there, so 12 to 21. And again, I'll go halfway, so maybe on this one I'll do somewhere in that 15, 16 range. So the next step is to put the water pump on. So now that we're at the water pump stage, before I start throwing this thing on there, let's talk gaskets. So when you order the Felt Pro gasket kit, it comes with a lot of stuff here. So these pieces are to piece your oil pan gasket back. I'm not doing that because I'm actually going to change the entire oil pan gasket, so we won't need those. Definitely won't need that. I believe that's for a fuel pump. And then you'll notice you'll have 3 gaskets in here. And if you're familiar with water pumps, they're all water pump gaskets, but only one of them is the correct one. So in this case, these 2 are not. And it is, in fact, this gasket, but it only comes with one. And so you have this plate here, and you have the actual water pump itself. So when you go and order this kit, be sure to order a second water pump gasket. So when I did it, I bought that entire kit, and then I went and I got this additional gasket. So when you read the directions before you order, a lot of times they'll say without additional gasket or without gasket between timing cover and so on and so forth. So just be aware of that. So basically we're going to put this gasket on here, and we're going to put this onto our water pump, and what's going to hold it on here is these 2 bolts, and they go right here in the bottom. As you can see, it's the only place that there's actual threads. Everything else is a through bolt. So I'm going to put that piece on, and then I'm going to bolt the entire thing here with the other gasket, and then I'll bring you back. So the water pump, as you can see, is on and torque to spec. I gotta say, I'm getting rather addicted to disassembling an engine and putting it all back nice and clean. So the next step here is you're gonna put your power steering assembly back on, which, if you weren't watching earlier, is just the 3 bolts that put it on right here. And then of course it has this little stud that it rides on right there. So once that is on, you've officially completed all the gasketry on the front of your engine. So I'll slide that one on there and bring it back. So now that we have the power steering pump and assembly over on that side, I turn the engine over so that we're once again looking at the bottom. And now it's time to put the vibration dampener on here. Now, let's take a moment here to look at this. So when you buy that seal kit, you'll notice it comes with this steel ring. And see how it's a separate piece right around there? I'll set this down so I can kind of point at it. See how right along the edge, you can see that it's a separate piece of metal? Well, that's a sleeve that comes in the kit, and you can put that sleeve on there so that it expands the shaft so you get a tighter fit up against the rubber seal, which, if you're worried about this thing leaking, definitely the best way to do it. You don't have to, so what I did is I took it and I slid it on there, and I saw it made pretty good contact on this side, but not on this side. So I put it on there just to be extra safe. And then you notice that this is definitely like a gear and cog kind of setup. So you have your way here, and then you have your key, as they're somewhat known, although a key normally is a separate piece in itself. And you'll just line those up like so. So it just went in, and then you'll push it into the rubber gasket. Now this one, because I have a much tighter feel, you'll see that it's starting to push the rubber gasket the wrong direction right there. So I'm going to put some oil around this thing, and then that will help lube it up to push it back in. And then what you'll do is you'll take your big giant nut right here, or your bolt I should say, and you'll bolt this guy back on there. The spec for that is 70 to 90 foot-pounds of torque. So just ram it home with the gun. And I might actually use one of my torque shafts to do that, just because I know how difficult it is to keep the engine from turning over when you try to use a breaker bar. But once that's in place, then you have reached the end of the task of changing all the gaskets on the front of the engine. So a real quick tip here. So I kept trying to put the harmonic balancer back in, and it kept moving the gasket and pushing it inward, and it needs to be outward. And so one of the little tricks you can do to make this easier is you take some plastic. So believe it or not, this was like a little hardware thing. A bunch of bolts came in it. And so what I did is I made a circle around it, put it inside the gasket, and then slipped the shaft of this in behind it. And this helped spread the gasket out. And then as soon as I got this inside, I pulled it out. And of course the rubber is going the right direction. And of course I can actually keep moving this forward and it will stay that way. So yeah, just a little tip. You can probably use like a milk jug or just about any plastic that's this thin and flat, but that's how I got that on there. So here we are, guys, back to where we started. Even with the crank pulley on this time. So for those of you who are curious and need to know this information, these 4 bolts, they're your crank pulley bolts, and it is 35 to 50 foot-pounds of torque to put those suckers on there. There's no real rhyme or reason to how they go on. I just like doing opposites because, you know, that's just how you do, you know, the studs on your wheels, and I'm kind of addicted to that pattern. So that's it. Now, after each piece that I took off, I washed and cleaned it. So you're probably like, so what did you do? Well, first off, you did not take it into the house because you know how the women in your life would be. They would kill you. So I got a plastic bin and some gasoline, and I set up a little station over there on the wall. And I washed every bolt and every part that came off the engine because they were just gross. And if you didn't know this, dirty bolts, especially the threads, when you go to try to torque those onto your engine, you won't actually get the correct torque specifications because that dirt adds a variable. So you definitely want to clean everything, and that's what I did. I mean, the start of this job, I was using these black gloves and rags like you couldn't believe, and it was just really annoying. Putting everything back together, I could almost do it bare hands, and my hands were clean, which to me, I take tremendous pride in having a clean engine, and the ease of putting everything back together and staying clean is just out of this world awesome. It's just, so little gasoline, little brake fluid, or brake cleaner, and you can have this thing pretty mirror clean, okay? Keep some steel wool handy. I have that honeycomb wheel on the angle grinder, stuff like that. Just, yeah, just does the trick. So I really hope you consider doing this because these engines are old, and I guarantee you, if you haven't done this work, yours is probably leaking like a sieve too, and you're on the quart of oil a week plan. Trust me, I've been there. So definitely consider doing this repair. So anyway, guys, that's all for me. Hit the subscribe icon over here. Check out some of my other videos. I'm Stevie from the Minute Masters. Thanks for watching.